Learning a new trick can be very challenging and it often involves quite a few crashes. But when it all does work out, it's totally worth it. In the last episode I taught you how to do your first turns on the foil. It involved the jibe, the down loop jibe and even a little foot switch. Those things are all going to get in handy when we take on the tacks. We're going to be looking at the tack, the roll tack and some exercises to do the roll tack. But let's start off all the way at the beginning. This is your first tack.
Ride in with medium speed at an upwind course. Steer your kite towards 12 and edge into the wind. Level out the board into the wind and perform a foot switch. Let the kite support your weight when switching your feet. Redirect board and kite to the new riding direction. Shift your weight back to the heels to gain tension in the lines. Ride out on an upwind angle and shift feet if needed.
When doing the tack, there are a few things you want to keep in mind. One of them is leveling out that foil just before your foot switch. So as you come in under an angle, riding upwind into the tack, just before you want to do your foot switch, you pull in that front leg to level out the foil, and then it's easier to make a switch on which edge you're pressing off the board. Next to that, you want to keep pressure on your front foot or the front of the board so the foil doesn't shoot out. Take your back foot, switch it to the front and your front foot goes to the back. But always keep one foot on the front of the board. After the tack, you want to get on edge as soon as possible. So lean in on those heels, put tension in those lines to make sure you speed out of the turn and you don't fall flat or without speed back into the water. If this is all a bit much for you and you don't feel like trying a foiling tack, you can always try one where your board touches the water. So let's have a look at that now.
Ride in with low speed at an upwind course. Apply pressure to the front foot so the board rides on the water. Switch your feet when the board has come to a full stop. Keep pressure on the back of the foot so the nose stays above the water. Steer the kite up and down in the wind window to gain speed. Bring the foil board out of the water and back onto the foil to ride it out. Continue on a cross or upwind course.
Unlike the foiling tack, you actually want to kill all your forward speed before doing the foot switch. Otherwise your board becomes very unstable. Next to that, make sure you also level it out and make sure it's not under an angle when trying the foot switch. Then the kite is also a very important aspect of the tack. So let's see how you're supposed to steer the kite.
Ride in with medium speed, kite at 45 degrees and an upwind course. Steer the kite up towards 12 and edge towards the wind shortly after. Pull the bar down as the kite passes 12 to perform the foot switch. Dive the kite back into the wind window to accelerate out of the tack. Control the kite and ride out at an upwind course.
One of the key things to keep in mind when doing the tack is to use the lift of the kite when it passes 12 to do the foot switch. Make sure that the kite actually is above you, otherwise it will pull you to one of the sides. The tack is actually easier on the bigger kites. I'm riding a 9 meter on 16 meter lines here. And the short lines actually make it quite hard as well. So preferably ride something around the 10 square meter, 11 square meter with normal 20 or 22 meter lines, and that will make it a lot easier. Next up is the roll tack, but there's still a little step in between that might make it easier. The following exercise and the one thereafter are both of equal difficulty, I would say. So have a look which one you prefer to try first. But this is the 360 Tack, I guess. I'm not sure what the name is actually, but check it out.
Ride in with medium to high speed and steer the kite up from 45 degrees. As the kite reaches 1, steer your board towards the wind and follow the movement of the kite. Slowly steer the kite past 12 as your board turns through the wind. Only pull your kite in a loop when you can look downwind. Continue following the movement of your kite and edge towards the wind. Ride out at a crosswind course.
I started with the overview of the 360 Tack because the kite steering is very important. First of all, always try to follow the kite when it loops. So make sure to follow the kite downwind so you don't get yanked off the board. Next to that, you want to be pulling your bar all the way down and crank it as much as possible when initiating the loop, so the loop is actually small and fast. Let's have a closer look on how to do this trick next.
Ride in with medium to high speed and steer the kite up from 45 degrees. Edge into the wind at the same time and follow the kite's movement. Keep pressure on your heels and look ahead into the turn. Follow the kite downwind during your loop. Steer the kite back towards 45 degrees and finish the turn with your board. Ride out on a crosswind course.
Unlike most tricks, speed is actually your friend when doing a 360 Tack. If you don't ride fast enough, you might get stuck halfway the turn and sink into the water. The timing is something to really keep in mind. As I have previously told you, only loop the kite when you can look downwind, so you know that you and the foil can follow the kite downwind. Next, we're going to look at a Rolltack without a foot switch. I'm not too certain which one is harder, because in the Rolltack you have to do a change of the edge, which can be quite hard, where with the 360 Tack you can just stay on your heel side edge the entire way. Let me know down in the comments what you think, and let's have a look at the next trick.
Ride in with medium speed and steer the kite up from 45 degrees. Edge your board into the wind and lean into the turn. Tighten your turn to bring your weight on top of the foil. Shift your weight from the heels to the toes and edge back towards the wind. Continue riding on a cross or upwind course depending on the line tension. Untwist the bar when you have full control of the kite.
The hardest part from this Rolltack without a foot switch is probably the moment where you go from a heel side to a toe side edge. Tighten your turn towards the end to make sure that the board gets underneath you and you can shift your weight over to the toes. Once you've done this, try to go back towards an upwind course as soon as possible to build up that line tension and make sure you ride out with speed. Next up, let's look at the overview so you know how to steer your kite.
Ride in with medium speed and steer the kite up from 45 degrees. Edge your board into the wind as the kite passes 12. Tighten your turn to shift weight over towards your toes. Dive kite down in the wind window to gain speed out of the turn. Correct the kite up so it doesn't hit the water and ride it out on an upwind course.
If you've done this a couple of times and you feel confident with the weight shifting, it's time to add the last ingredient, and this is the foot switch.
Ride in with medium speed and steer the kite up from 45 degrees. Edge the board into the wind as the kite passes 1. As the kite passes 12, level out your board and perform a foot switch using your kite for support. Dive the kite back in the wind window and shift weight towards your heels. Ride out on a cross or upwind course to gain line tension.
When doing the foot switch, you'll be supported by your kite. So it's very important that you only do the foot switch when that kite actually passes 12, where it has the most lift. Next to that, it's important to level out that board as always in any type of tack, so you don't scissor and fall on the foil. Next up, let's have a look at that kite and what it's doing.
Ride in with medium speed and steer the kite up from 45 degrees. Edge the board into the wind as the kite passes 1. As the kite passes 12, level out your board and perform a foot switch using your kite for support. Dive the kite back in the wind window and shift weight towards your heels. ride out on a cross or upwind course to gain line tension.
After you steered your kite past 12 and successfully done the foot switch, you really want to dive the kite back into the wind window to gain power and ride out of your trick. If you don't dive it down hard enough, most likely you will sink into the water because you don't have enough speed. Always keep in mind that it's a lot easier to do these tricks with the bigger kites. Bigger kites and longer lines deliver a longer moment of lift, and therefore you have more time to do the foot switch. And that's it for now. Hope you guys enjoyed it. In 2 weeks I'll be dropping some twin tip videos. It's about the back roll and the front roll. So make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss those. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Comment if you have questions, and I'll see you in 2 weeks.